Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 3 of our May Art Challenge. I am starting off with a size 6 round brush today, and I'm going to tape off the sides somewhat similar on 3 of the sides. And then for that bottom one, I'm taping it a little further from the edge because I'm going for that Polaroid photo look. Here's a look at my reference photo for today. I took this photo in Scarborough, Maine in 2019. And sadly, that is the last time I have been there. It is time to go back. All right, for the sky, I am just starting with wetting off the paper, a little bit of water, just enough so it glistens, but no pooling water. And then the blue that I'm using here is a mixture of Prussian blue and coal black from my Paul Rubens set. And the red I'm using is called Scarlet. And I'm just letting everything blend together. We're doing wet on wet. So the paper was wet first, and then I added the Prussian blue and coal black mixture, and then the red right on top of that as that blue mixture was still wet. And just letting it all blend together and helping it all blend together, bringing in even more blue to darken up the upper portion of the sky, and then going to bring it down into the red just to tone it down a bit and let it all blend together. We're not going for photorealistic. I'm taking some liberties here. There's no pink in the sky of my photo, just using that as a loose reference. All right, for the ocean portion of our painting, I am using the same mixture of the Prussian blue and coal black, but this time I have way less water on my brush and a lot more color on my brush. And I'm just painting that line in there basically. Now, because I painted this ocean portion while the sky was still wet, there's a little bit of bleeding into that. So I cleaned my brush off and tapped it on my paper towel, and I'm just running it across there to soften everything up. And this time we're going to let everything completely dry before we paint in our next step, which is the sandy path. And I am starting out with yellow ochre for a more golden look to the sand. You can use a diluted brown if you wanted a more tan look to the sand, but this was my preference for this painting. And I'm here while it's still wet, I'm just adding some more of the same yellow ochre, just darkening up spots here and there, and I will be tweaking it even more a little bit later. And I'm coming in now with my greens, yellow green, tree green, and hooker's green for the grassy area. The sandy part is all completely dry now, and I'm coming in first with the yellow green, which might look a little odd, but in watercolors, we paint from light to dark. And that is because if I were to start with the darkest green that I'm using today, which is the hooker's green, and then I tried to come back in with this yellow green, you wouldn't be able to see it. And there I accidentally dipped my brush into the tree green, but that's okay. I'm going back with the yellow green because we will be blending tree green and yellow green together. If you're new to watercolors and painting along with me here, be sure to pay attention to when I say we're doing wet on wet or letting something completely dry before we start the next layer, or else it can be pretty frustrating. All right, wet on wet here. So all that yellow green is still wet, and we're coming in with the tree green, and we're just gonna start adding it in here and there. And I am not looking at my reference photo at this point. I really just looked at it at the beginning, and I might refer to it here and there just to get certain shapes, but I am just adding in this tree green to add dimension. Can you see the grasses kind of starting to form? It's just darkening up that yellow green, but still letting it peek through and just add some depth. So it's starting to look like a grassy area rather than just a flat color. Now I let that completely dry, and we're coming in with our hooker's green, and I'm just darkening up the corners. Again, I'm not looking at my photo. This is just personal preference, artistic liberty, if you will. And I'm darkening up the edge of the path. And can you see how that's adding to the depth of the painting? And you can either go directly from a photo and try to get all the shadows and different shading here and there. I am just going in and dabbing in this hooker's green onto those first 2 layers, again, that are completely dry. And you can see the mounds of grass start to form, and we will be adding some wisps of grass here in a little bit in a couple different ways that I'll show you. And you can see that I'm putting that dark green right up against the ocean. Now, this is a size 0 fine liner brush, and I will show you that this is one way to add some grass. If you have a fine liner brush or just a smaller brush that you feel comfortable adding very fine lines of grass in there, you're welcome to do that. You can also skip this step if you don't have a fine liner, or maybe you just don't feel like your touch is light enough to do this. There is a much easier way, perhaps, where you have a little bit more control that I'm going to show you here in a little bit. I read recently on another artist's post, someone had commented that landscapes are not for beginners, and I just don't see it that way. I mean, there are definitely photorealistic landscapes that are not for beginners, but when you're doing an abstract painting like this, if you just look at it step by step, the sky is a series of lines, the ocean, it's basically one big line, the path is somewhat of a triangle, and then you've got your grassy areas to fill in. So just take your time, slow down the video, pause the video, whatever you need to do. All right, I'm coming in with my size 2 brush, and just to show you a difference in the brushes today, that's the 2 on the left, the 6 in the middle, and the fine liner on the right. Apologies if this is confusing, but I'm using this brown, but I believe I switched the names of these colors because they didn't make sense to me. But if you're using the Paul Rubens set, I'm using the brown that is 2 up from the coal black. All right, and I'm going to paint in my fence posts, and this first layer, most of the posts are going to be transparent because watercolors are transparent. So we're going to do one layer of posts and then come in and do a second layer. But you can see I'm just drawing in a line. Again, another line. We're just going to take them line by line, layer by layer, step by step, and just painting in our posts, gradually decreasing in size as we get closer to the water, and letting those completely dry before we come in and darken up the ones that need to be darkened. If you're painting along with me today, don't worry if your painting looks a little different. Every painting has its own kind of personality, and that's the beauty of it. All right, we're going to paint in our rails today. And if you remember from the photo, the fence in the photo was pretty wonky, so I am going to make mine wonky as well. And let's be honest, I would probably make mine wonky even if it had been a perfect fence in the photo. You know, the more you practice, the more you build some confidence and just kind of a freedom to make the painting your own. All right, those are dry. They don't really need to be because I'm working on the path now, but I am coming in with a mixture of yellow ochre and the same brown that I used on the fence, and just darkening up on the edges of the path again and adding the darker tone into the sand just to add maybe some shadows and depth to that path. I'm curious, have you found some time to paint this month? I know some of you have. I have enjoyed so much those of you who have shared your paintings with me on Facebook and Instagram, and also those of you who have shared stories of what's going on in your life and how painting has been helpful. I am bringing in my Jelly Roll size 10 pen. This is absolutely optional. I love pen details. So I'm imagining my light source coming from the right side of the painting. And therefore, I'm just adding some highlights onto this side of the fence post. And over here, I'm just kind of putting it on what I consider to be like the back of the fence post, where the light would be hitting the back side of it. And we're just going to play with it, putting it on the tops of the fence rails as well, and on the tops of the posts, just kind of wherever you think the light might be hitting. And now I'm going to come in with a black pen. This is a Micron size 5. Here's a Sharpie pen. Here's a Sharpie gel pen, just showing you that we have options. Now, this is where we're going to add in the grass that maybe if you don't feel comfortable using a fine liner or you don't have one, you can just add the grass with a black pen. And I actually really like how this looks. So you can be the judge and do whatever works for you. But back to the pen I'm using. I decided this is, look, you can see this is a clicky pen. It's nothing fancy except it's a gel pen. So maybe you think that's fancy. I don't know. But the point being, we are done painting. So if you are done painting for sure, and you know you're not going to add any more paint or water, you don't have to be careful to use a waterproof pen. Okay, I am taking the black pen and darkening this side of the fence. still imagining the light source coming from the right, so that side of the fence is going to be dark. And then over here, I'm going to do the back side of the posts and the underneath side of the rails of the fence, kind of like we did with the white on the other fence, if that makes sense. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing since I can't seem to get it out. All right, let's take off our tape and see what our border looks like. And there we have it, our little Polaroid photo looking painting. I'm going to go ahead and sign it. Do you sign your art? I don't always remember to. I don't know. All right, over here I decided to write Scarborough, Maine. Just kind of, since this looks like a Polaroid, I thought I'd write the location like you might do that on an actual photo. Or you could write the date. It's all personal preference. Thanks so much for joining me for this one, and I hope it inspired you to paint something today. Let me know if you give it a try, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss day 4.